Happy New Year to everybody. 2023. I know we had some challenges on Christmas Day, um, but I hope everybody is in good health and good spirits now. And if you're going to be careful, I understand we're supposed to have some messy weather later on in the weekend. I would like to say this is a development that we have had a meeting on before. It is off of Hamilton Church. And so I do want you to be conscientious about, please, if there's input or changes or something that you want, to please bring that forth. The developers have been open to taking some of your suggestions. If there are suggestions that you gave at the last meeting that you remember that they did not attend to, please make sure to bring that forth to their attention. As I said earlier, I had a meeting with a client in Shelbyville, and that's where I'm driving back from now. So I will be mostly listening. If you, when the developer's finished, if you have your hand up or something and they don't see you, then when there's a lull in the conversation, please just go ahead and say, excuse me, and jump in to give your input. I am going to ask, as I always ask, please, if quite a few people have said the same thing, please bring forth new ideas. And please don't let your voice be the only one heard. I would like to hear from people more than the same person. And I would love to hear mostly from the people that are in that area that stay maybe within walking distance or whatever of the development that is going on. I would ask that we are very careful about talking while others are talking. This is a teacher in me. Put your standards on so that you have what you're going to say and you go ahead and say that, and you're not just giving your point, but if you do have suggestions and concerns, that you go ahead and outline those. Joshua, you were here to present before, so they should recognize you. Please, because I will not be able to monitor the chat, and I guess maybe Matt can help with that too, monitor the chat and the hands, because I know a lot of people in our group will put questions and comments in the chat room. So with that said, I am about to turn it over and thank everybody for taking time on this Thursday to be here with us and to listen to what's going on. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Joshua.
All right, thanks. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone can see me. As Miss Lee said, I recognize most of the names on this list. So I believe this is the third meeting we've had on this. So just quick, I'll run through it again, since I think people are mainly familiar. This is effectively a development plan for what would be active adult-friendly development off of Hamilton Church Road. And we're looking at a total over the 13 acres and change, looking at a total of around 111 units. And that's a mix of attached and detached options. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen so you can, let's see, give me 1 second. And oh goodness, for me to share the screen, I'm gonna have to quit and log back in order for me to share the screen. Is that something that we're open to doing here? It would take about 45 seconds. I just want to confirm and let people know I'm gonna have to exit out and come right back in. Does that make sense?
Probably if you went on and did it now, it wouldn't take as long. Just tell them you'll be right back in a second.
All right, cool. I'll be right back in a second. Thanks, guys.
I want to use this time while he's gone to say that I know the holiday has brought a lot of trash and things around. Our beautification commissioner has been working hard over the holiday to try to, when you all send him things, to make sure that Metro gets that and sends somebody out there to clean it up. So I want to give kudos to him. And so please get that in. If you have a particular area that you think is really, really bad, because we don't know unless you tell us. Also, if you see something, say something and go ahead and put it in the hub, because they do pay attention to that. So I just wanted to go ahead and put that out, and especially the different potholes too, since we're having such bad weather and cold. If you have some major potholes, the city doesn't know it unless somebody tells, and we've got a division of somebody who is responsible for going out and doing something about the potholes. So if you have things like that, go ahead and put it in the hub, share it, or I think the number is 311 that you can also share. And while we're waiting for him to come back on, I don't know that, Deontay, I don't know if you are on here and you want to share anything about some of the cleanups that you have planned.
Deontay is not on the call.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks so much. So we will wait until Joshua can get back on.
All right, I'm back. It didn't really take that long at all. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and share. Can you guys see what's going on here? Let's go to show. Let's start. Okay, cool. So great. All right. So yeah. So this again, third meeting on this. This is basically an SP Hamilton Church Road. We've already gone through Planning Commission. We received their approval. There was no one really showed up against it, except for there was a clarification on how we plan to help preserve the cemetery, which we addressed that. And I think we came to satisfactory conclusion on that. So going to the next slide here. Sorry, guys, bear with me. I got a new computer, and that is what is confusing. Okay. So this is the site. So this is from two views, from Hamilton Church Road and then from Coneflower Trail. And this you can see basically is the map of it. It's pretty simple. So we've got Coneflower Trail, and then we have Painter Drive. I've actually knocked on basically all of the doors in the radius up and down Coneflower and on Painter Drive. And basically went around and asking basically telling them about the development and getting a little feedback and then getting their sign off and support. And when I went out and did that, I was successful in getting about 20 odd signatures in favor and support, which kind of makes sense given the muted response we got from community when it came to the planning department, since all the notices would have went out in the 1,000-mile radius, which of course touches all the people in the subdivision that were immediately going to be able to walk through this new development, and of course the people to the south as well if they chose to do so. Water and sewer map. All right, so basically why is this needed? Why is this important? Severe shortage of affordable and available housing, and really for seniors, this is the biggest issue that I see, is that we have very limited housing, and as time goes on, we're going to continue to have less and less housing that is active adult or senior citizen friendly, and that's just the reality of how things are going. So in my mind, it makes sense to think 3 to 5 years down the road and prepare for this eventuality, and that's effectively the goal here. So you'll see the site plan. I can try to zoom in as best as possible, but I believe many of you guys have seen a rendition of this in one way, shape, or form. So the main changes that happened from the last community meeting, what we did was I took all the notes and went and tried to address all the concerns as best as possible. And the one concern we had was, well, we needed more amenities. So what we did was we added more walking trails and actually added more, well, there's 2 different dog parks. And there's also some activity and fitness center, outdoor stuff as well as reserving a little bit more green space that's actually usable and walkable and serves as social and common space as well. Because one thing I'm envisioning for this development here is, as seniors move in, and I'm going to get into a little bit more of the specifics of this a little bit later on. But as people move in, it's geared for active adults and senior citizens, but in reality, there's going to be younger people who are visiting them. They may have a daughter, or they may have a daughter or a son who's living with them. And that's why what we did with the footprints, especially up here in the phase one area, we have our 20 by 60s, which that includes all of the living you need on one level, including a master bed and bath, as well as two-car garage. So you have the option, and then of course having a second and a second and a half story above that, which you can or you cannot, of course, walk up the stairs. You have the option to do so. So that's very intentional, and a lot of thought went into that. So that's why that has been. There is a comment in the chat I will go ahead and address. How many units are one story? None of the units are one story. However, all of the units have sufficient footprint in order to have master bed, bath, closet, laundry, kitchen, living, dining, and garage on the first level in the phase one area for certain. So for all the 20 by 60s, that's where that can 100% be achieved, and also in the 20 by 50s as well. And of course, the second stories with Act 4, they can walk up the stairs as well. If you're a 55-year-old, many 55-year-olds to 70-year-olds, they can walk upstairs, but they have the option not to. And that's what's really going on here. It's actually increasing the options and making it to where you can age in place and it's livable. As far as other things with the site plan itself, all the right of way is public, by the way. So effectively, there's public road that is going from north to south, Hamilton Church, and then of course connecting over into Painter Drive. So that'll be dedicated to the public realm, and all of that development will have to go in. It's also not really touched on in the site plan, but as a condition of preliminary approval, we have to study and more than likely end up improving the traffic situation at Hamilton Church and Mountain View Road. And that is one large condition of approval, or excuse me, a final SP approval, assuming that the preliminary SP is able to go through. Since our traffic study did show that that is not the most optimal connection, and some improvement of some sort needs to be made. So as we go through the final SP process, which is after the preliminary, then I, as the developer and team, we have to address this. So I'm gonna come back to this, but I'll break it down a little bit more of the different unit types we have. So there's really three different unit types. There's the attached 20 by 60. There's the detached 25 by 40. And then there is attached really 20 by 50 all the way to 25 by 40. And that pretty much speaks for itself. Again, we have multiple housing choice. We also have some, it's very intentional design, again, with how the layouts are. And of course, the majority of these things are townhomes. And going over here, so this is what's been submitted to planning department. So this is effectively the field that we're going for. And when it comes to final plans, architecture, and design, we can't really deviate too far from this. But effectively, it's a modern, contemporary, suburban feel and design, basically incorporating single gables, larger windows, etc. Nothing too fancy, nothing too flashy. Of course, we have to have hardy siding. Well, majority will be hardy siding with some stone accents, more than likely. Of course, we can't do any vinyl or anything like that. I did see a question asked if they were all rear loaded, and no, not all of the units are rear loaded. So I can get to that when I get back to the site plan. And again, so that's the attached. That's what attached would like, because there are detached options, and some of the detached homes actually would end up being front loaded. So you can see on your left, that's literally like a typical house that would end up being detached. And then to your right, you can see how those would go, and those are actually front loaded. So the detached, some of the front loaded, I do believe those are 25 by, those are the 25 by 40s or so, give or take. And I want to say these are just some sample layouts of what, of basically how it could go, how it could be laid out. There's been, we have not, because we have not gotten through preliminary SP and we are not at final, I have not spent a great deal of resources on final architecture because it literally just can't justify doing that until after preliminary. And this is basically the last slide of the show. Again, which is why saying why this development makes sense, why it's important. And I'm I'm pretty confident saying that this development over the long run definitely net improves the area. By creating more connectivity off of Painter and Coneflower and adding more sidewalks and with actual amenities that are private amenities that would more or less end up being utilized by outsiders from or nearby neighbors from the community. I think it's doing a lot of good, and especially if we have to go, it's not if we have to end up addressing or doing something to alleviate the traffic at Hamilton Church and Mount View Road, which otherwise might not get done for who knows how long. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I think there are a few in the chat. I was able to answer, I think, 2 or 3 of them as I saw them come across the screen. And Jared from Catalyst, he's online too, so we can help answer any nitty-gritty questions you may have. And with that, excuse me. With that, sorry, computer was sliding around. With that, I guess I will go to the site plan slide, and I will stop sharing. Well, I guess I'll keep sharing my screen, I guess. All right. Any questions?
I have one.
All right.
You say that you're gonna have to do something to help with the traffic because I live really close to where you're presenting about. And what is something that you're gonna do?
So the something that we have to do, that's a conversation with NDOT. So, and Jared can speak maybe better to this. However, we had to do a traffic study, which showed, basically all the nearest intersections and traffic flow and how this development would impact this. And though it was found that that this development would have a minimal impact, the issue is the existing situation is already not great. So, we would have to study that intersection more. And it looks as if the recommendation would end up being some type of traffic mediator of some sort. I was told a roundabout of some sort or some other measure would have to be taken. But I think Jerry can speak to it better than I can.
Correct, Josh. We, in working with NDOT and the traffic consultant, it sounds like NDOT is considering a traffic circle or a roundabout at that intersection. The specifics haven't really been looked into yet, other than just NDOT doing some very high level studies on their end, and then our traffic consultant kind of confirming their assumptions. But between now and kind of final SP approval, we'll have to spend the time and the resources to look into, confirming NDOT's assumption that a traffic roundabout is the best solution there.
And
I don't see how.
I'm sorry. I was just saying my conversation with them at the beginning had to do with the roundabouts because I was trying to bring forth how we have the speeding through the different neighborhoods and stuff. So that may be where they came from. So even though the study may not say that is needed, if that is something as a community that you want to see, or you have some other measures that might help within the complex to help, please let us hear. Now that won't help with the traffic on the major roads. So the only thing we were talking about that was really inside.
Well,
Actually, just to be clear, the roundabout is not on site. That is an off-site improvement that is
yeah,
being,
and I don't. Sorry, I have more to say. So, because I don't know where they will put a roundabout, and there's a lot of traffic that goes through there. I go through there, and if you're gonna put more homes, there's just gonna be more traffic. And now we're kind of stuck on Hudson Pike and Montview going towards Hamilton Church. I mean, I'm very concerned because I don't see how this is gonna work out. It's just like we talked, Miss Antoinette, with the vice mayor's meeting. This is too much on our neighborhoods.
Well, anyway,
Okay,
well,
thank you,
that's
Melissa.
well, I think that's what we were trying to explain and help you to understand. There's already an issue out here, and as far as addressing it at Hamilton Church in Mountain View, this is off-site. This is not on this property. Um, as far as solutions to actually fix that, what we find is a lot of times infrastructure has to be put in by the private person rather than the actual public government. And effectively, there's a solution for a roundabout or some other means off-site that improves the daily lives of not just people who would be in this community or this.
But you're adding to the problem. I'm sorry. You're not going to convince me that your development is going to make it better. My commute. So, just that's my comment. I know there's other questions.
Sure, fair enough. Was there any? I can't see the chat because my screen is being shared. So if we're happy to, I'm happy to answer whatever questions may be in the chat.
I have a question.
Sure.
Could you expand on aging in place here?
Sure.
I'm one of those elderly people that go up steps. My concept of aging in place, I don't see anything here that would agree with the concept of aging in place. So please expand on what that means for you.
Well, aging in place, I mean, it simply means that you have an abode, a home, a dwelling, which you can reasonably foresee yourself living in until you would maybe have to go to more of an intensive care or a full service facility. That's what aging in place means. A lot of people aren't able to age in place. For instance, if you have a huge ranch home that you can't really keep up anymore, could even be on one level, but you can't keep the yard work up, or or you just can't keep the home maintenance. And that's a huge part of aging in place, right? Is basically having areas where the maintenance is much lower, or it's basically being full service taken care for you, whether it's an HOA or etc. So aging in place, it's a lot of little components that go into that. That's my understanding, and I believe that's the understanding of most other individuals is what that means. Is there anything else you want me to clarify on that, or what?
Yeah, that's. I just want to know what you thought it was.
Okay.
John asked a couple of questions in the chat that I'll read. First is, have you built a development of this type before?
Of this specific type, no.
Got it. Are all of these rear loaded?
No, they are not all rear loaded. The majority are, but I want to say about maybe 25 to 30% are actually front loaded.
What was the unit count last year versus this year?
The unit count is roughly the same, and to be quite frank, given the amount of actual public infrastructure we have to put in, it's gonna need to be kind of right here. It's already at the point where the justification of it, especially if addressing other offsite concerns and other offsite infrastructure concerns as well. If that's the case, what we're doing, which we are willing to do, the unit count right at around the 111 mark under preliminary, that's kind of where we are. So that really hasn't changed, and that's by just necessity at this point for feasibility purposes.
Got it. As far as the interior roadways go, do you have plans of traffic calming by design? I mean, there's the median in the middle, but throughout the rest as well, or other elements you were considering?
I believe and I think Jared can speak to this better than I can. I know we've spoken about this before, and I do know that there was talk about some other measures, but then again, there was issues with how like fire trucks and ambulances or something. But I think Jared was there.
From what I remember, the issue would be that it has been mostly universally decided, at least in Metro, that emergency vehicles don't prefer speed bumps anymore, but prefer speed cushions, which is what NDOT is now implementing kind of all over the county with their traffic calming program.
Correct. Well, I think I believe we as a group have talked about before about potentially implementing, I think other terms are traffic tables, things like that. Speed humps, you're correct, are not an option. EMS absolutely does not want those. So I think we've talked about it. I think probably an optimal area would be maybe we look at implementing one somewhere where the median is midway. I think it would make a great probably crossing point to get from maybe the dog park over to the outdoor fitness area. And then, we could also look at potentially doing something up at the intersection of the two public roads.
What furthering on that, what are the widths of y'all's sidewalks and interior roads that y'all are working with right now?
So the roads are all public standard dimensions. The main north-south road is a standard 27-foot pavement, but it's a 50-foot cross section. As it gets toward the median, it widens out to a 70-foot cross section, and then the extension of Painter Drive is actually closer to. It'll be a 55-foot cross section per planning. NDOT has asked that we make that wider cross section.
Last question that's currently in the chat is what if you hadn't built a development of this type before, what other developments have you overseen the completion of? Usually this question is asked so people can see where else in the county, go and see what the developments look like that you finished.
Sure, yeah. So most of everything I've done has actually been, I guess, north of town, and I guess the 37218, 37207 zip code, which has mainly just been infill. There's been some infill townhomes and infill single family homes as well. And that's what I've overseen the completion myself. I do have various other land sites, which will be for some medium to larger size developments, and those will be built on as the years go on. Again, for a project like this, first off, dirt wouldn't move for probably 3 years at this point. And that's for a whole lot of factors, including final SP and what's called economic reality. As the world continues to turn and interest rates are quite high. So those are things as well. So development takes forever, which we're well aware of. But I can give some addresses of some building of some homes and things I've completed, which I think I've done that before, but I'm happy to do that in the chat. Yeah, short-term rentals are prohibited. I saw that come through on my little. I can see the comments if they're in real time, but I can't go in the chat and look. But yeah, short-term rentals are prohibited per zoning. I saw it, but it was a long comment from Mr. Price, so I only got a snippet of it.
Says existing driveways on Painter Drive are not deep enough to park 2 cars deep without blocking sidewalks. Many cars are parked on the street. Leading to possible traffic issues.
Jared can speak on this, but I don't think our development is really that's not really an issue for us. Because going along Painter Drive, those are all the homes that are rear loaded. So there's no real parking on the street, or there's not supposed to be like prolonged parking on the street. But Jared, can you speak to that a little bit more so we can make sure we're clarifying that?
Yeah, I guess I'm assuming the question is probably referring to existing Painter Drive, but with the proposed extension of Painter Drive, no, we don't have driveways off of Painter Drive. It's all rear loaded.
Thanks. I saw a few.
This is Larry. What I was referring to was the impact of the increased traffic that this development will create on Painter Drive with the already parking situation where people existing homes on Painter Drive are parking their cars on the street.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a different question. What's so fascinating about this is, again, I went and I knocked on every door on Painter Drive and Coneflower Trail, and I actually had a pretty high contact rate. And as I was driving by, I mean, yes, there are people that would park on the street, but that's not the vast majority. Most people, now, I guess they might have guests and stuff come over. That's different. But the vast majority did use their driveways. So I didn't notice this as a huge issue. For instance, like they're not blocking the street, if that makes sense. And that was on my actual walking observation. Now, as far as total traffic impact, again, we've had our studies, and but studies are studies, so I don't have to go into that. I do believe that there will be people will end up going through Hamilton Church and through Painter Drive. But again, on my observation, I didn't. It's not like they were. The cars weren't blocking the street because I was easily able to drive up and down and park on the side or what have you. Now I did notice, however, up on what is that, Coneflower, right at that where it's currently dead end. And now people were parking there, but that makes sense because it's a dead end. But once it's not a dead end, then I think that will end up, abating. I think we got a few more.
There's a question regarding the impact on or from Savage Creek regarding stormwater and flooding or potential flooding.
I mean, I can answer that, Josh. I mean, I think we talk about this pretty much every meeting. I mean, we're mandated by Metro and the state to not have any impact. We're outside of the required state buffers. All stormwater is handled on site. It's treated on site, and the intent is that it's supposed to be released at a condition prior to anything that we've seen in recent years. So I mean, it's kind of the same thing that we discuss about we discuss at all three meetings now. Nothing has changed from that perspective. We're handling all the treatment on site, and we're outside the buffers.
This is Larry, just clarifying on that. We've had a lot of rain in December and the beginning of this week and last week, I guess. That would have been a good time to have gone and looked at the site. Did anybody do that?
I personally did not.
No, I did not either.
So that means
And not before you go on. And again, well, there's a few reasons for that and why that would have been an afterthought. Well, given the situation of how the topography works, how it's kind of like sloping inverted down to the creek, and given that it's heavily forested, what's going to end up happening here is once actual new storm infrastructure goes in, you're going to be dealing with an entirely different situation to begin with. So I don't think it's 100% fair to take ground as it is now and then assume ground as it is now will end up being ground as it is in the future. But I do understand the rain because yeah, I mean there's been a lot of rain. And I do know all this ends up flowing down to Percy Priest. So it's actually kind of all going, I guess, what is that? It's going east versus going west. And the creek flows through this very small little subsection of it. And of course, all the water again goes down in there. So I think what we're going to end up having is it's very hard to visualize like the actual like future, like when it comes from a construction standpoint. But to Jared's point, stormwater is pretty relentless nowadays as far as beefing up your requirements and always adding something new. And again, we haven't even gotten through final SP, which is that's going to be the real deal right there. So, yes, it was there, but yeah, hopefully that helped answer the question.
Yeah, but maybe Joshua, maybe you and Jared can educate us. You've mentioned a number of times that you are not through preliminary, you're not through final SP, and yet this has cleared the planning commission and is, I think, getting ready to be submitted to council on a first vote. So explain to us what that means, preliminary SP, final SP. Um, I think, sorry, but I think there are people on this call that want to know, okay, so when do we get screwed?
Well, I think that's going in with the wrong intention to begin with. And I will answer to the best of my ability, and Jared, feel free to chime in. So effectively, there are different stages in this process when dealing with specific plans. So specific plan, which is what this is, going under preliminary, is effectively is effectively site plan with preliminary engineered notes, drawings, and standards to what the final development has to comply with. All right. So that's what you go through for preliminary. And preliminary, you go through planning. So planning has their stamp of approval on it. There are public notices sent out on that. People, you can come and get comment on planning's guidance and policy for an area. That's what that's for. Once you go through that stage, then it moves to council since there's a zoning component. If there was no zoning component, then it would just stay with the planning commission, but there's a zoning component. So the way it works here in this city is there's 3 readings, introduction, public hearing, 3rd reading, and then it's signed into law. All right, so that's everything that's done on paper. Now we move into reality, which is effectively final SP. And the final SP is nitty gritty. You still have to comply with everything that's been signed off on paper in the project. And you have to move through all of your departments with all of your final designs. And these things must be approved. And there are tons and tons of iterations. And nowadays it takes a year or even longer to get anything effectively permitted through for actual construction. So that's the process. And you can't really do final SP until you've done preliminary, or rather it doesn't make much feasible sense to go through and all for final, and it doesn't make sense to basically go through. You can't, well, you can, but you can't like go through final and then go and then be done. That's the step. So Jared can maybe chime in on something I missed, but that's pretty much the process there. And I think that's just the wrong mentality to go through. It's just assuming that, you're gonna get screwed. But that can be touched on at a later date.
Yeah, Mr. McDonald, could I interject for a moment? Um, have you so you haven't developed a whole subdivision like this before? Have you got financial backing already for the acquisition of the property, and do you have builders in mind for the development?
Well, yeah, so definitely, so from a financing standpoint, yes. So definitely able to fund acquisition as well as actually horizontal development as well, looking into that. Now, as far as different builders in mind, it's a question mark. There are a few that I have looked at. Most of them are more infill. This is more of like a larger scale suburban. So as a lot of the larger home builders start to scale back and they're actually taking on fee work, there's a good number, whether or not that's from HND or that's from even Old South or even Century Communities or a builder such as that. And they're basically building for fee versus like actually, building as developer. So there's a good number of outfits that can do it or that can take on the work, especially when it comes to the actual horizontal work. So as far as like site contractors, Jared's services are pretty good, etc. So some thought has been given to that, but of course at this stage it's really trying to like fine tune, the development on paper, and then once it's
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so since you haven't done one of these developments, have you gone through any of the training programs that are out there for young developers like yourself, like the Urban League of Central Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, their RED Institute? We're working with graduates of that right now, and it helps them understand the immensity of the undertaking that's before them. have you been through any of those training programs, or do you have any education that relates to the construction industry?
So that's interesting. So I mean, well, as far as the Urban League Red Institute, I've heard of Urban League. I've not heard of that specific program. I'm in ULI, do Urban Land Institute, and then do the various seminars and etc. And
Yeah.
go through and read for that. And my background is actually in finance and planning. So my background is more in the on the investment side of things.
Sure.
Now, when it comes to the construction side of things, well, I'm not a contractor.
Okay.
But over time, having, building like multiple infill homes and, basically being able to read and, study and look at case studies, and, work with engineers and really, because that's all it is, right? It's partnering with, people who are obviously, more experienced and, have, basically more experience than I do from an engineering and contractor standpoint. So, it's basically figuring out, well, how do you make a good qualified decision and determining that. So I think in the future, as that goes on, something I'm open to learning
Yeah.
in construction.
Okay. So considering the lack of history that you have to bring to the table,
Sure.
I would recommend to this community that they enter into a significant discussion with you about the details of the project. The problem, I've been watching Antioch for 35 years, and unfortunately, they have let developments in that have created significant economic and social issues in the area. I'm sure you're aware of that. So the stuff that comes in today needs to improve the overall condition of the Antioch area, not just put housing in that meets the market that exists today. They need to create a market for a little higher end stuff than what they have today. But so I go back to the original question. Would you be willing to enter into significant discussion about detailing your SP so that the knowledgeable residents in the Antioch community can be assured that what you're saying and what your intent is actually appears on the ground in 3 to 5 years?
Sure. Well, I think that's part of that's been some of the point of the community meetings. So yes, I'm 100% open to that, and I think that makes sense. I guess the question is how granular um, do we get is the point, because again, I didn't get, and we have to speak on this, but there's bulk and building standards, and there's other amenities and things that can be added in. It's just a matter of how granular we have to get. And I am unfortunately more or less on a somewhat of a time schedule here. Been working on this now for or trying to go through planning on this now for just preliminary for just about a year. So I don't have a whole lot of additional time. But again,
Unless you extend your options.
right. But I mean, that's not 100% within my control, which I know that going well into it. So
Joshua,
we are now.
Joshua,
Yeah.
let me jump in very quickly, and John, because we've got almost 10 minutes left. Part of, and I want to jump back to when they were asking about the process too. I think that was Larry. I want to make sure that everybody who is on the call knows, as Joshua was giving the steps, that it is not automatic that it is going to council, because that has not been put forth yet. And that usually isn't put forth until we have a little more buy-in from the community. And as Joshua has said, that's what these meetings are for. That's why I keep asking for people to go ahead and give me their input. Go ahead and say your concerns, those type of things. Now, I have no problem with, and I do know what is being asked. I have no problem with Joshua or his others with his company meeting with individual groups of the community. That's why I asked him to make sure that he went to doors in the community, knocked on them, and talked to them about what's going on. But if that happens, I don't think this is the place where individual entities say you need to meet with us. I am welcome to you all putting things in the chat so that he can get with you. I'm welcome to his group meeting with that, but I know in the individual community meetings that I hold and that I set up, it is set up for the entire community to be talking and get that stuff done. So I understand what is being asked, and I will ask if you want to reach out to him, because he can put his stuff in the side chat, and you all want to set up something, then that's fine. But these community meetings are the ones where I would really like for people in the district, everyone, not just whether you're a member of a particular entity or not, to be able to talk and give what they want. And again, this is still a process. Joshua understands it's still a process. It has not come to me to sign yet. I am not signing yet because I don't feel that that's where we are yet. So I did want to put that piece out there. If anybody else, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Melissa. I do have a comment about, thank you. Just wanted to say that this is the place to communicate with the developers, but how many residents are in this call? It's and I know that's their choice, but see, South friends of Southeast Nashville, we have a lot of people that are in our lists, and we can get people to join the meetings. And as you know, I'm the president of the HOA now, so I can bring people in and get them to just like give their opinion. But this, I don't know how many people are we, 5 here? Like, this is not enough. We need more opinions.
You are true, and I totally agree with that. So I don't understand. I don't see us saying anything different. We do need more on this. I wish more were on this. I can't hold fire to someone's feet to make them join. If you are the president of HOA and you can announce to the HOA that these are happening, then I would appreciate that to anybody in the community to get more people on. This is the meeting that is established by the council person here. And technically, this is the official meeting. I have no problem with any other ones. I have no problem if you want to do something else, but I would love for you to try to get as many people on this one, as you can, so we all can hear what's going on. So I don't have an argument with what you're saying. I think that's good, and the more people that we get involved, but I don't want people to feel like they have to go through a certain thing. Maybe they can go through all of them. I don't know. I don't know, but thank you, Melissa, and congratulations on being the president now.
Thank you.
And thank you, Antoinette. That's marvelous to hear. We've developed a process by which we hope to get to much better outcomes in the development of the Southeast. So we appreciate your support.
We have about 6 more minutes. Is there anybody that maybe isn't used to talking, has questions, or hasn't talked yet, has questions, or want to know anything before we wrap it up? While you all are talking, I will tell you, if you are inviting people, I would love, my preference is especially the people that are around that area to come out. I know that we send out documentation to everybody who's on the database, and Metro also sends out postcards, I believe it is, like within 1,000 miles of whatever the development is, because I think it's very important for those to be out too.
Beat.
Go ahead. Somebody was starting to say something.
It's 1,000 feet.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say? I said miles, didn't I? Oh my goodness.
My sister would have gotten a notice.
Oh, I'm dropping my stuff. Okay. So,
Well, I actually do have a question. So, this is really important for like planning purposes. So again, since this is the third meeting, and I was under the impression that we more or less incorporated, the majority of the feedback, as well as, effectively working to address even offsite traffic concerns and et cetera. So where I'm sitting at right now is effectively trying to figure out, next steps and what specific things like actually need to be incorporated or taken away. So if I could have clarity on that, then that makes life that much easier for everybody from a planning perspective. So is there
That's
any
fair.
feedback on that?
That's fair. And you addressed different things because I do remember the question about more amenities, and you did that. So let me ask now, except for just, well, I won't even say that. Let me ask now at the last couple of minutes, things that people brought up, wanted to see that don't, and you don't see it, or something that you thought should have been in there that isn't, or something you talked about. I did hear people talking about the traffic outside. So what is there right quick that you can tell them, well, this is what we said and you didn't do anything to that we need to see this before we even consider that?
I mean, I can speak for Josh. I think, in the past couple of meetings, there's been continued conversation about traffic at the intersection adjacent nearby. And that is something that NDOT brought up. Our traffic consultant looked at it as well. And that's where we were talking about earlier that there is now the discussion of a traffic circle over there. I know there were potentially plans or something in the works. NDOT has basically, as a condition of this project, that we are now looking at that. So I would say that that's where we're at. It was discussed. We looked at it. I think, as we probably mentioned last time, there's continued discussion about extending the public roads and things like that. And that's we're literally doing what we've been told by NDOT. I mean, we shy of telling them, we're not going to do anything, and then basically telling us we have no choice. And that's where we're at. So I mean, we're looking at the offsite stuff. Like I said, we don't know what that full design of that roundabout or the traffic circle is yet. But that's something that has to be coordinated in the coming months with NDOT.
Hey, Councilwoman Lee, can I just make a comment real quick on that? This is Mr. White. So I think I've been listening on the call, and I think what would actually help us is that, as the gentleman just spoke, we don't really have defined plans, and I'm not asking for it to be 100% because I know things change. But when you're looking to get buy-in from a community standpoint, there needs to be some type of detailed information that we can go based off of what you guys are trying to do. What I've seen today was only, information about the houses and that roundabout that you guys are still gathering information about. So it's still not even 100% on what you guys are going to do with that. And so I think if we're looking to have collaborative conversations around this topic and its development, if we can actually get defined information and points on how it's going to work within the community, I think that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. White. And I'm thinking, I was reading the part about nothing in writing. I think a piece of that too is you've talked about the SP, but they haven't seen the SP, so they don't actually know what's going to be in the SP or what's specifically is going to be outlined. I have found that there is some real nervousness about hearing something said that is going to be there but then they don't have anything in writing, or there's nothing to say that that is going to be there. So you talked about some things, and you talked about some details, but I think what they need to do is either see those things listed out so that there'll be some proof that this is what you said you're going to have in there, or have some of it in the SP, because the SP, you said you're going to have hardy board and you're going to have some rock and different things like that. So those things can be listed in the SP so that if something happens, you know, we had this conversation before about if something happens to you and you're no longer here, but the land is already zoned a certain place, because there's enough details in the document that's with it. By law, those things will have to be done. So I think that's the kind of thing. So when you get some of those things in writing, listed out, and when you have some of the things around what you're going to put in the SP, that would be good too. If you send that to Rosie, then we can send that out to everybody so they can take a look at that too as you work through things. And I will, last piece I will say is with our traffic folks and all that kind of stuff. You know, when they ask you to do things, they ask you to do the minimum, and that's what they're looking at as the standards. What the community is asking you to do is a little more about what can you do to help us. That may not be easy for you now, but in the long run, it will be an advantage, and it will help foster what you're doing. So when you look at things, you don't have to look at just what the Metro divisions say you have to do. You can look beyond that.
Sure.
And
All this is actually written out in the SP, so I guess that's public. That's publicly available. So all of this, all the design standards and stuff are currently written in the SP, and I guess that just needs to be downloaded from the planning department and sent over. Typically, the SP is a bill, so I'm not sure if the bill has even been prepared to even read, if that makes sense. But and then the iteration with that, what's been my experience in the past, is you have your bill, and then you see as it's written out in the SP, and then the bill can either be amended or whatever, you know, at the final, or some other resolution passed along with it that specifies X, Y, and Z. So that's kind of where we're at. That's where we really need to get to, because all of these things are specified out, you know, as far as what, from detail, what's going in versus what's not going in. The one thing that we didn't really get to talk about was as far as HOA, et cetera, and active adult communities, but that's not a zoning situation. That's a federal and a state housing authority situation. And that has to be addressed, you know, via HOA and et cetera. But that's not really a zoning thing, so that can't actually be written into an SP. And that's from legal counsel. So we're there. We're there. All of it's written out. It's just a matter of what needs to go, what additional things need to go in versus what maybe needs to be taken out. So that's where, at this point, I'm trying to, you know, I think we're all trying to get to.
So in the past, the things that we talk about is what's put in the SP, and we put that in there before I even agree to sign it. And I understand what you said, that it can be amended later, but I don't even let it go like to second or third reading if it doesn't have those things in it. So,
right. So let's figure out what those things are. Right.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we have to figure out what additional things those are.
They're the same thing that we've been talking about. It's got to do with the how the houses are going to look, how tall they're going to be, what they're going to have, what they're going to be made up of, all those different type of things. And you can also have attached to it some of the specifics that you want included in the HOA, like that only a small percentage of the houses can be rented out. Say somebody who buys a house has to move and they want to rent it out, those type of things, or Airbnbs, or it won't be used for any of that, those type of things. Those are the things.
Okay. Is it possible to get, and so someone has to be the decision maker or the arbiter here. So is it possible to get, you know, a list of these things and then?
Sure. It should be the same things that we have been talking about in these meetings and that you talked about with me. So I can, we can set up another meeting. Matt has helped me to put stuff together before so that we can get those things, those type of things done. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from some other groups on some different things that they may want to see in there. So we'll see what can be put in the SP. I'm only dealing with the SP and the things that Metro has in place to make sure that those are put in the bill. So we can have some conversations around those later because it's like 6 after now.
Okay,
So
yeah.
just make sure that you have somebody as well, because I see a lot of other discussion is coming up in the chat room that you have to take a look at that, because once the meeting closes down, I don't think you can get back to the chat room, or maybe Matt or Rosie can help get to that. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I think that's the plan, because I think maybe a lot of it might just be we need to read and see what's currently in the SP now, because and then kind of go from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Correct. That's why I was saying if we get that, and we can see, because if you put things in there from our conversations, then a lot of it should be good. And you can send that over, because I've had somebody to send it to me before they've even submitted it, so that we can send it out to the community. So you get that and we can send it out, and then I'm sure you get some comments about other things.
Okay, cool. All right. We'll get to work on that right away.
All right. Anybody need to say one quick last thing at 7 minutes after?
Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua, you all have any quick something to end up with?
No, thank you all for your time. And sure, once the SP can get circulated around and people can read it, then I think it's just a matter of adding and taking away, and then we can pretty much keep on keeping on at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I did not do this at the very beginning. Matt, thank you so very much. I don't think Roseanne is on there this time. Matt is taking up much of the slack and really helping Roseanne and helping me with things. So Matt, thank you so very, very much for being on and helping us with all of this. I hope everybody else is staying safe. Happy New Year. And thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to what wants to come in your community. Good night, all.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Y'all too.